ChatGPT and other large language models basically feel like magic. It feels like no matter what you type into the chat, it always turns into something that just a couple years ago would have taken you hours and hours to research yourself. If that is simply asking for some cooking inspiration for tonight's dinner, or if you're asking to draft up a work email, or even asking to write your wedding vows, ChatGPT can do it all. And frankly, now I've gotten to a point where I use the tool every single day and I kind of grew a little addiction to it. However, just 2 months ago, MIT released a shocking study showing that people who use ChatGPT showed a 47% collapse of their brain activity. In all gratefulness for all those great new tools, we really have to understand how to use them, otherwise our brains will simply shut down at one point. Hi, I'm Simon, and in today's video I want to dive into the brain rot danger when using ChatGPT and how you, with some simple tweaks, can turn the tool into something that actually makes you smarter with every interaction you have with it. In just a couple of decades, we went from newspapers to television to the internet and now to large language models that can even be used by your mother-in-law. And with each development, it decreased the effort of our brains to think for themselves, and it became more and more convenient for us to use. The problem with this convenience increase is what Dr. Amen calls convenience before consequences. And that basically means that as soon as something is convenient, people will start running after it, no matter the consequences. And humanity has proven convenience over consequences many times. Just mentioning sugar, the overuse of social media, alcohol, and many more. We all know that an overconsumption of sugar can cause diabetes, or that an overuse of social media can cause anxiety. Yet we keep consuming. One very obvious example of convenience over consequence is the easy access to fast food and the obesity rate in America. Times and times again, people pick a short-term reward over long-term consequences. And I'm a victim of it myself as well. The problem now with ChatGPT is that it's really increasing the stakes, because instead of attacking our bellies like sugar and fast food, it's directly attacking our brains. Let me tell you a quick story, because just 2 weeks ago I was traveling for work and I was strolling around trying to find a decent restaurant. So I turned to ChatGPT and I typed in a prompt similar to this. Give me some restaurants in my location that I might like. Since I was hangry, tired and typing while walking, I didn't even care about typos, grammar or any human etiquette. And guess what? ChatGPT, like it always does, analyzed my answer, didn't care about the typos, and came up with a structured list of recommended restaurants, from which I picked one and I had a perfect evening. So let's dissect what actually happened here. Basically, I achieved an outstanding result without any engagement of my brain at all. And that's amazing, and that's also the magic of it, and it's also why I grew a little addiction to the tool. But the hidden danger in that is tied to something that Dr. Amen refers to as cognitive load. You can imagine cognitive load being the weights in a gym, while your brain is the muscle that you're trying to train. The more cognitive load, which basically means how much you use your brain to think, analyze and connect, the stronger your brain gets. Now, people that don't use their brain as much and thus lift less cognitive load are proven to have weaker brains. The issue with having weaker brains, besides being a little less sharp and maybe a little bit slower than people around you, is that it's seriously increasing the chance of getting Alzheimer or dementia when you're growing older. Now let's go back to my restaurant search example. Before the internet, you might have read a city guide, or maybe you even talked to a local to get a recommendation. Then, once the internet got established, you might Google and search among the results for something that might fit your taste. But now it's enough to type in 10 words from which more than half is spelled incorrectly to get a perfect restaurant recommendation. The problem? With each evolution, the cognitive load for our brains has decreased, which makes our brains less engaged and thus also weaker over time. If you made it until this point in the video, congratulations, because for me that means that you actually want to change how you interact with ChatGPT. And the good news is that with just some simple tweaks, you can start using ChatGPT to actually make you smarter with each interaction. The first and most easy thing you can do is to actually start treating your chats as a conversation with someone. Basically start being social with ChatGPT by being polite, conversational, and by asking follow-up questions. What treating a chat like a conversation with another human does is that it lights up our social brain, which basically keeps us more active and involved during the conversation. Therefore, your brain is more engaged during the conversation and therefore lifts more cognitive load. The second and most impactful thing that you can do is actually to start writing a piece of content yourself, if that is an essay, book chapter, marketing strategy, or hiring profile, and then just basically ask ChatGPT to give you critical feedback and improvement suggestions. And what that does is that your brain is still still bearing the major part of the cognitive load, but you use the immense capacity of ChatGPT to actually enhance your work and to improve through its feedback. And the third tip is the most game-changing tweak that you can do in your daily prompting with ChatGPT. And that is basically to ask the tool before each prompt to act like a teacher that makes sure that you learn sustainable with each interaction. One quick and easy way of doing that is typing the following prompt before you start each chat. Act as my teacher that treats every request as a learning session that maximizes my own thinking. Do not provide me with all the information at once, but ask me questions and don't move on until I answer. If you have the paid version and you like working with projects, you can also copy and paste the following prompt into the instruction folder. I copied the prompt in the description box below. Feel free to save it somewhere and try it next time you start engaging with ChatGPT. Here's a little side-by-side comparison on how this prompt turns a simple request into a real learning journey, which will actually engage your brain and will leave you smarter than you've started. Here on the left, you can see what a normal request to ChatGPT looks like. I asked to summarize the book Atomic Habits for me. Without the prompt, ChatGPT goes right to work and starts summarizing the book. So within a couple seconds, you have a whole summary of the core ideas, the different laws that James Clear came up with, how you can break habits, and how you should put systems over goals. You basically get a summary of the entire book without engaging your brain at all, and without lifting any cognitive weight. Now on the right side, we can see how ChatGPT changes its behavior when having copy and pasted the prompt beforehand. The request remains the same, it should summarize the book Atomic Habits for me. But before diving into the summary, it asked me a couple questions first. It starts off by asking if I want a broad summary or a particular guide, if I'm more interested in psychology or active tactics, and how long the summary should be. Then, in order to tailor it better for me and also to increase my engagement, we start a conversation. ChatGPT asked me about my situation and if I want to build good habits or break bad ones. It also asked me if I want to concentrate on daily consistency or if we actually want to achieve big life shifts. And while the conversation goes on, my brain continues to get more involved, my memory increases, and the cognitive load on my brain rises. That when we actually go into the summary of the book, it's highly tailored to my situation and the information will stick to my memory much longer. Therefore, my learning experience was much deeper than without using the prompt. You can either use AI as a crutch or as a coach. The takeaway of this video is that your brain basically operates after the saying, use it or lose it. Everything comes at a cost, and if the price that you pay is related to a loss of sharpness in your brain, you should maybe think twice. And to be honest, I also struggle a lot of times to not choose the fast way. And in many situations, I still do. But when I realize that I frequently outsource the heavy lifting of the cognitive load to my chat buddy, I stop and remember that there are alternative ways of using the technologies that we are so privileged to have access to. Just remember that, like with any new technology, governments moves too slow. So it's up to ourselves to set up our own rules and make sure that we don't get carried away. It's basically your brain and your responsibility. So try using ChatGPT as a teacher in order to actually get smarter with every interaction, and try out the prompt that I copied into the description box below. If you felt progress or actually tried it out, let me know in your comments about your experience. Also, I'm super curious to hear about your interactions with ChatGPT and if you have found other ways of escaping the brain rot. Let me know in the comments below and see you in the next video.